Perfect. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming to our event today. It's lovely to see so many people here, and I hope that we'll have a lively discussion after all the presentations are through. So we're going to talk a little bit today about Open Research Europe and its future and how we can establish some key synergies for an open and sustainable publishing platform going forwards. So some housekeeping notes before we get started. This meeting is being recorded, as you may have just noticed, and all participants will receive a link to the recording after the event. The slides have already been posted on Zenodo, but there might be a little bit of an updated version coming after the event, but you will find them there. And I think Athena is going to put the link in the chat box for you all. So if you wanted to save them for later or send them on, you can. We do ask that you please keep your camera off during the presentations, just so it's not distracting to anyone else. But if you do want to speak up afterwards during the question and answer session of the webinar, feel free to put your camera and turn your microphone back on so you can have a little bit of a chat afterwards. And if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat box and we'll get to them at the end. Or once we're in that discussion portion at the end, you can raise your hand somewhere. Where is that feature, Athena?
In the reactions.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so you can do that as well, and we will get to your question that way. Oops. So today, the first speaker is going to be myself. So I'm Kelly Woods. I'm a senior associate publisher at F1000, and I will be giving a bit of an introduction into Open Research Europe, what it is, what it's about, and how it's gone over the last year. Then we will hear from Vinciane Gaillard, who is the Deputy Director for Research and Innovation, who's going to speak a little bit from the European University Association perspective. Thirdly, we'll have Ignacy Labastida, who's the chair of the LIRU Information and Open Access Policy Group. So he'll give a bit of a perspective from them. And then finally, we will hear from Susanna Nikiri, who's the manager of Open Science Services at Tampere University Library in Finland. So we'll have a librarian's perspective as well. So hopefully we have a lot of different voices contributing to the discussion, and I'm really keen to hear all of the participants' voices as well at the end. So hopefully we'll have some good action points coming from this webinar as well. So I'll jump straight in with my presentation. So as I said, my name is Kelly and I work at F1000. So if you weren't aware of the connection between Open Research Europe and F1000, I'll briefly explain. The Commission put out a call for tender in 2019, I want to say, to launch an open access publishing platform for their beneficiaries, and F1000 won that tender. So the contract runs until 2024, during which time F1000 and myself will be responsible for looking after Open Research Europe. Once that contract has ended, though, the European Commission has committed funds to continue Open Research Europe without any disruption of service, just potentially with another provider at that point, but that is yet to be seen. So that's the connection there. Sometimes a little bit confusing why someone from F1000 is speaking about it, but that's why. So I am briefly going to go over sort of how the model actually works, just in case people aren't aware, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. I've given a couple of talks at LIBA events before and at other events. So unfortunately, if you search on the web, you'll probably find me talking about the model in great detail in some other sessions. So I won't go into too much detail, but essentially the authors submit, so any Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe beneficiary can go onto the platform and submit their article for publication on Open Research Europe. At that stage, it will go through a number of pre-publication checks to make sure that it meets all of our guidelines and all of our publishing policies, which are fully compliant with the current Horizon Europe guidelines and policies in the grant agreement. So beneficiaries can rest assured that by publishing with Open Research Europe, they're meeting all of the requirements set out for them in their grant agreement, which is great, and people really love that. We do operate on an open data policy of as open as possible, but as closed as necessary. So at this stage, we will also check that any data that is associated with that article has also been deposited in a trusted repository as per detailed on the website. And we'll also run some plagiarism checks, image manipulation checks, all those sort of standard ethics checks that you get as part of a traditional journal publication service that you possibly wouldn't see on a preprint server. Once the article has passed all of those initial checks, it is published on the site. It has its own DOI. It's already fully citable at that point, and that's when we would begin the open peer review process. So our peer review model is very much author-led. So during during the initial submission stage, we will ask for the authors to provide their suggestions of people that work in the community who they think would be well suited to review this article. We will check these people and make sure that there's not any conflict of interest there, and make sure that they are experienced enough, have the right expertise to actually review this paper, and then we will initiate these invitations. But the paper is published on the site whilst this peer review process is ongoing. As soon as we receive the review reports back from the reviewers, we publish those on the site as well. So they're fully citable, they have their own DOIs. So the whole sort of peer review process of the article is really fully open and transparent for all of the readers as well as the authors to see. The reviewers have three choices of peer review status: either approved, approved with reservations, which is kind of minor revisions, or not approved, which is more sort of significant issues that need resolving before the article can be considered as passed peer review. The authors are then invited at that point to revise the article and submit an updated version, along with a description of all of the changes that have been made and responses to the individual reviewer comments. And the same reviewers will then reassess the article and hopefully adjust their statuses accordingly, depending on what revisions have been made. Once the article has reached the threshold of passing peer review, which is either 2 approved review statuses or 1 approved and 2 approved with reservations, it is at that point that we would begin to send the articles to relevant indexes and repositories, and that's when we would consider it to have completed and passed peer review. So a whistle-stop tour of the model there, and then I wanted to give a little bit of a general update as to how the platform has been going over the last year. So firstly, this graph is just showing in terms of numbers, how many submissions, how many publications, and how many submissions and publications we've received over the last year and a bit. So as you can see, we've received a steady stream of submissions, and we've had 329 as of last night, I think it was, and 227 of those have been published. The major discrepancy there is we still have a good chunk that are currently undergoing the peer review checks, which take somewhere between 7 and 14 days. But at the beginning of the platform, we did receive quite a lot of content that had already been published elsewhere. So there was a misconception that Open Research Europe was a repository and could be used as such. It definitely is not. And so that accounts for a lot of the submissions that we received, which did not ultimately end up being published on the platform. Of those 227 publications, 174 of them have completed peer review, meaning they have received at least 2 peer review reports, but they may still be undergoing revision at this time. And of those 174, 113 of them have reached that threshold to pass peer review. And I'll give some detail later on about the time it's taking for each of those stages as well. So in terms of the types of articles that we're receiving, one of the main goals of the platform initially when it was launched was really to capture all of that non-traditional work that goes alongside the more traditional research article or review papers that get published in the sort of normal project lifecycle. So we have a wide variety of article types on Open Research Europe that differ between the subject areas as well. And it's really great to see that so many of those are being taken up and used by the authors. So currently 54% of our articles account for traditional research articles, like the traditional research papers or review articles. The other 46% are made up by all of the other article types that we offer. And the 3 most common ones on the right-hand side there are our methods articles, case reports, and software tool articles. So we've been particularly successful within the engineering and technology community, and we have quite a lot of software tool articles that have been published and data notes came very quickly after that. So these more alternative article types that you wouldn't necessarily find on other publishing platforms or journals. Open Research Europe is a great place to send that content to make sure that we're really making the most of the research funding that comes from Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, and providing those authors with a venue to publish all of the work that's come out of their grant instead of just that key story or that main piece at the end. So across all of these articles so far, we have accrued over 17,000 total views on everything that's published and over 4,000 total downloads. So it's really nice to see these numbers go up so quickly as well. They're probably out of date already now. I only did this the other day. But it's really nice to see such high levels of engagement with the content that we are putting out onto the site. So in terms of processing times, from when the article gets submitted to when the author receives the first sort of decision, if you like, from our editorial office is about 7 days. So what that constitutes is our team checking that it meets our guidelines, that the data has been deposited, and just getting back to the authors with any feedback that we have. If they haven't deposited, asking why that might be and providing some suggestions of where they can, and also just asking them to make some minor changes to the article if necessary to make sure that it fits our article guidelines. So that process is currently taking about 7 days on average for the authors to hear back from us, and these are median times. The median time currently from that first submission to publication of the article is 45 days. So it takes us, as I said, about 7 days to get that initial feedback to them. There's then a period where the authors are revising that content and making it conform to our guidelines. And then it takes about 14 days for our editorial office to finalize the peer review suggestions that have been provided by the authors, and also for the article to go through production and copy editing and be formatted, ready to go live on the site. So that process in total taking 45 days. And currently the time from publication to passing peer review, so receiving those either two approved statuses or one approved and two approved with reservation, is taking 96 days. So if you compare this to other sort of more traditional ways of publishing, it would take about 45 days, I would say, to get your sort of first decision. And that's before the article is even published at all. And then anything around sort of 90 to 100 days to get your peer review reports back is really good going. So the fact that the article is online from as early as an average of 45 days after submitting, and it's online throughout the whole process of peer review, really is beneficial for getting that research out there much earlier than more conventional journals would allow. So how is this actually going down with the community, and how are we trying to engage with the researchers to publish on Open Research Europe? So we're doing this in a couple of ways. One of the key things that we've done in the last few months is to launch more thematic areas on the site. So previously, when you logged on, it was kind of just one big platform with all of the articles grouped together. You couldn't really navigate to find, or not easily navigate to find the areas that were really relevant to you. So in the last few months, we've launched 21 community gateways, which are kind of broader subject areas. So sort of like pharmacy, analytical chemistry, some earth and environmental sciences aspects as well. And they sort of act as almost sections of a conventional journal, if you like. So they're headed up by our community gateway advisors, who really help to format the scope for those community gateways and help us to promote these areas, promote Open Research Europe within their research communities. And then at a little bit more of a niche level, on the right-hand side here, you can see some examples of our collections that we've launched. So we've got surgery, DNA, migration, and robotics here. And these are more niche, more specific subject areas, sometimes highlighting more interdisciplinary areas of research as well. And these are also headed up by guest advisors, who again work with us to draft the scopes for these collections and also assist us in promoting these collections within their research communities. And I think both of these aspects on the platform are now fully trackable. So if you are a migration researcher and you want to be kept up to date with all of the work that's being published on Open Research Europe in this area, you can track track that collection, and you'll be notified of any new papers that are coming up on the site in that area. So I think this just is a much more user-friendly way for people to navigate the site and find areas that are more relevant to their research that they're working on, and also to potentially find new collaborators within that as well. Another thing that we're trying to highlight to Horizon beneficiaries is the opportunity on Open Research Europe to publish throughout the life cycle of your project. So we mentioned that we have this wide variety of different article types that are available on the platform. And so trying to sort of switch the mentality and moving away from just publishing that one major research article at the end of your project, but maybe publishing, you know, a methods paper or a study protocol earlier on, or maybe publishing a brief report at some point throughout the project with sort of a side piece of work that doesn't quite fit into the natural story of that final research article that you want to put together. So I find this a really useful slide to just sort of highlight how the different article types we offer can fit into the project lifecycle and how researchers can best make use of that. So how can we collaborate more effectively with libraries to promote Open Research Europe to researchers and really push this message? Firstly, sort of why should we do that? Why should libraries really be promoting Open Research Europe? And the main reason for that really is Open Research Europe provides a cost-effective, high-quality publishing venue to Horizon-funded researchers, and it is supported obviously by the European Commission, by the funder themselves. And on top of that, it's fully compliant with all the Horizon policies and grant agreement requirements. And since taking on this position, I have had to become very familiar with the Horizon Europe policies and the grant agreement requirements, and I still sometimes find them a little bit confusing. So I can imagine that the researchers as well often struggle to know whether they're hitting the mark there and whether they're complying fully. So it's really reassuring to know that publishing with ORE takes all of that off of their hands, and we make sure that all aspects of the grant agreement requirements are met just through publishing with us. Once they submit, that's it, we'll take care of the rest of it. How might libraries engage with us to promote Open Research Europe a little bit more? Namely sharing the promotional material that we've put together, and also reaching out to us to let us know if they would like any promotional material, or just sending back any feedback that they have from researchers in their institutions as well. We're really happy to come, maybe in person now things are opening up, but definitely in a virtual format, to come and speak at any institutional events that you might be putting on for researchers at your organization. So I'll pop my email address in the chat. I think it's on the slides anyway, but I'll pop it in there, and you can feel free to reach out to us afterwards to arrange any events like that. Finally, who might be interested in Open Research Europe and any events that we were putting on? Primarily, it's going to be researchers that already have Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe funding, as that's the only people that are eligible to publish on the site at this time. However, I think these sorts of events are also really interesting for researchers intending to apply for Horizon Europe funding in the current round, because it will be a venue for them to publish for the duration of their grant project if they are successful in their application. But additionally, anybody with an interest in open science practices, I think we are starting to see more of a push towards these diamond models, and a push towards more transparency and more openness in open science in general. So it's nice to see so many people with an active interest in these practices. And we do have a number of roles on the platform that are available to people that do not necessarily have Horizon funding. So our community gateway and our guest advisor positions, we're not necessarily restricting those to people with funding. We're really looking for people who are active researchers in that subject area and are also really passionate about these open science principles and think that this model of publishing is the way to go, is the future. So even if they don't have funding but really believe in the ethos and the model of the platform, they may well be interested to learn a little bit more about it and potentially to get involved in one of those capacities. And that was what I could come up with so far, but I'm really interested to see what the rest of the speakers have to say, and what we can get from the discussion at the end. So from there, I think I am handing over to Vinciane. So I will stop sharing.
I'm here. Good afternoon all. So I'll share my screen. I had it, but now, of course, I don't have it anymore. Bear with me. No, so this is not. Okay, apologies for that. Yes, here you go. And then big one, and then two. Yep. So I think this should be the good setting. Can you please, Kelly, confirm that you see like the main slide? Kelly,
Yes, I can see the slide. Yeah, perfect.
Right. Thank you so much. Okay, good afternoon all. My name is Vincent Gaillard, and Deputy Director for Research and Innovation at the European University Association. And I'm very pleased to be here today. I thank the organizers for the invitation, because of course, Open Research Europe and what it brings to the community is of core key importance for EUA. So I will here give some ideas as to the priorities and the lines of activities of EUA in terms of open science in general, open access in particular. And before I get into the gist of it, I just wanted to give you an overview of what EUA is for those of you who don't know us. So we are the voice of universities in Europe with more than 850 members in 49 countries. And the specificity of EUA also is that among our members, we have 34 national rectors conferences. Then I will already start with the end almost of the presentation with a spoiler alert, which is that we fully support Open Research Europe as a means to advance open access. So it is that kind of open publishing platform that is a prime example of how research funders, here the European Commission as a research or as a funder, can help and support the community in publishing. And the reasons why we support this initiative are here. So these are features of Open Science, Open Research Europe that I noted and that I put, I linked to our own strategic priorities in the context of open science and open access. So first of all, we could really see and say that Open Research Europe contributes to what we call a just scholarly publishing ecosystem. And we define this as it is written here. It is a system that is transparent. Down there in the third one, you see that it provides transparent pricing. It is diverse, economically affordable and sustainable. This is something we may want to discuss afterwards. Technically interoperable and steered by the research community and its institutions through coordinated policies. And that was mentioned by Kelly already. We could say, and this is also a question that we can put for the discussion afterwards, that Open Research Europe is one of those exemplars in the Diamond Open Access model. I mentioned pricing. What is very important to EUA as well is that authors don't even have to ask to retain their authors' rights, because by default, as part of ORE, you have a CC BY license for all the publications, which is very good. And then what we very much like in there as well is the open peer review model, because this is linked to another stream of work we do in the context of open science and research in general, is the reform of research assessment, and the fact that as part of the research and innovation community and system, there are many things that researchers do as part of the team effort. And one part of what they do is reviewing the pieces by others. And so far, this is not really acknowledged, not even, not to say that it's not rewarded. So here, you have the citation of your own reviews, and you can be granted for that or acknowledged for that. So this is very good. So now, what else can I say? Because you got it all from the beginning. No, well, seriously, I can give you like a few ideas on what is it that we do. I will have to skip some slides because otherwise it will be too long, but you will have them. You have them already on Zenodo. So what is important is that EUA publishes regular open science surveys to that come from our members, and the latest was published a bit about a year ago in July 2021, and the conclusions all point to the same direction: is that we need to bridge the gap between the strategic policies at institutional level, the approaches at strategic level, the internal policies, and then the implementation on the ground for open science. So the willingness is there, but then it's about how to actually translate that into actual practices. The same is about supporting institutional leaders. Could be leaders of libraries, university libraries, to create a favorable context. And then, of course, we all have the same objective here, is that open science becomes the new normal. And as I mentioned, we really have a holistic perspective on open science. So all aspects of open science should be fully developed at policy level, but of course, importantly, at implementation level. And the reason I'm mentioning this kind of the need to coordinate and the line between the strategic approaches, the policies, and the implementation is one of those results that we got from this the latest survey. You have here, it's a spider web or a radar chart where you have like the level of strategic importance assigned to different areas of open science and the level of implementation. So importance is light blue, implementation is the dark blue. And you can see that on the top of it, you have open access to research publications. You see that it's been assigned or given by our respondents very high levels of importance as well as implementation. So very high on this scale from 1 to 6. Actually, this graph does not really translate the actual numbers, because it turns out that if we ask the level of strategic importance that is given, we have 90% of our respondents saying that it's either important or highly important. I mean, open access to research publications. Very good. But it's only 60% or above 60% of our respondents saying that assigning to themselves, to their own institutions, a high or a very high level of implementation for open access to research publications. So that means that even for one of those most important and historically most important areas of open science, which is open access to research publications, we still have some kind of a implementation gap in a way. Then a quick one, just to let you know that in terms of the implementation, because we put that in the context of the implementation of Plan S, you know that it's in place now, it's been a year and a half, and we see a difference in the countries, whether or not the main funder at national level has endorsed, adopted Plan S or not. On the left side, what you see is that when there is adoption at national level, the level of readiness and preparedness for the implementation of Plan S at institutional levels is super high, where you have like almost the reverse pattern of results, which is in countries where the national funder or the main funders have not adopted Plan S, you have more universities that are not prepared. And just a word of caution, this may have changed in the meantime. Those data date back already like almost a year and a half, almost when Plan S entered into force. Now, with all this information in mind, and there is way more in this Open Science survey report, we defined priorities for EUA and a vision for 2025 for universities in the context of open science. We've defined 3 priority areas. The first one is completely relevant to this meeting. It's about every word is important here in even identifying the priority area. It's about universal and perpetual open access to scholarly outputs in a just scholarly publishing ecosystem as defined previously. And then in terms of the how we see, like as a vision, we would like to see universities part of a system that would be characterized in the future, at least, by academic ownership and by age, so that the system would be a just scholarly publishing ecosystem. Then we have 2 more priority areas. I'll go through them very rapidly. Fair research data, institutional approaches to research assessment. For each of them, I have presented the vision aspects. We have an open science agenda that we published in February 2022, so details are there. When we focus on open access, so here we have in this open science agenda, EUA open science agenda, we have used this definition of open access, which is a credit or that has been inspired by both Science Europe, the research funding organizations and research performing organizations, as well as the International Science Council. So you have the definition, the way as we understand open access here. And again, we see that as part of a just scholarly publishing ecosystem as defined below. The challenges that we see in terms of open access are related to the dominance of a single open access route. So basically what we call for is a diversity in a diverse ways, different ways to get there. We really think that getting and or reclaiming academic ownership is part of the both of the vision, but it is challenging at sometimes. In that context, ensuring high quality open peer review is a challenge as well. And again, this relates to what is in the ORE. And then of course, this is why we say that it's a holistic vision to open science, is that you cannot change one aspect here, namely open access, without thinking of the consequences of the whole system. And so that means that we need to change the academic assessment system, the scholarly system, the incentives that come with it. Of course, this should never be at the cost of diversity, inclusion, and equity. So this should be considered in the progress towards open access. Here you have an outline on of what EUA commits or envisages to do in the context of open access. Again, it is part of the EUA open science agenda. You can see that in details. And then I wanted just to finish on something that we published back in October, I think 2021, which is the University Open Access Checklist, which is really a toolkit, a kind of a la carte menu that we proposed for universities to have different approaches to advance open access at their own level. And so we organized this in 3 streams, 3 main goals. You have the empowerment, the capacity building, and the reinforcement of existing structures, so that we use what is it there. So you have university leaders, you have university libraries, as well as consortia and publishers for the second one. And the third one is all the actions that can be taken at institutional level. So this one is the summary of those 3 goals and the target audience, let's say, for each of them, and then the possible actions. And then in the actual document, in the checklist, you have the details for each of those, 6, 4, and 3 actions. And we do not just detail the actions themselves, but we present a rationale the motivation, let's say, and we also do not shy away from presenting possible pitfalls or considerations that need to be taken with this or that action. Now, to wrap up, again, you know already that there is full support on behalf of EUA. That was said. Now, going back to the question in terms of the challenges for the future, we may ask ourselves, okay, those initiatives that are self-supported, by self-supported, it's supported by the Commission, we can reasonably ask about long-term goals, sustainability on the long run. And this relates to another question I have. It's about, is it really considered, can we consider this ORE as part of the Diamond Open Access model? And so in case later on, I took a definition of Diamond Open Access that we can discuss. And then a question that we have at EUA in terms of ORE, for instance, is how is this discussed and how is the editorial line defined? And then a challenge, and this is what we are discussing here today, it's the uptake by researchers, individual researchers, as well as by institutions. So I'll leave it here now. I very much look forward to the discussion. And just if you want to keep in touch with EUA, you just can go to our website, register to our newsletters, and so on. I thank you very much for your attention, and I leave it to the next speaker.
Excellent, thank you. I'm looking forward to returning to those challenges later on. And we're handing over to Ignacy now.
Okay, hello everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation. I'm gonna share my screen too. And I'm Ignacy Labastida from the University of Barcelona. I'm the Rector's Delegate for Open Science at my university, but I'm here also because I'm the chair of the LERU Policy Group on Information and Open Access. And I can also give you a spoiler that from the LERU, we also support Open Research Europe, but let me explain a little bit why we support and what we do for the ones who don't know yet what is the LERU. So I will start with a bit of context, and I will, I will start by presenting the LERU. The LERU is a network of 23 European research-intensive universities based in 12 European countries that was created 20 years ago. And we develop and disseminate our views on research, innovation, and higher education, through policy, papers, statements, meetings, and events, helping to shape policy at the EU level. And you will see in a moment that I will refer to some of these policy papers and statements because we reflect our position in the topic that we are talking about today. The LERU is organized in different policy groups and different ad hoc groups. And one of these policy groups is the one I'm chairing, the one of information and open access that we have been working since the beginning of the creation of the LERU on all these topics, especially related with libraries. These groups are responsible for feeding into the development of high-level and agreed views and papers to influence policymaking. So from our policy groups, we report to the board of directors, the board of the association, and the rector assembly. That is where the rectors draft and designs the policies on the LERU. So among all these papers, I would like to highlight some of them because, as you see, for more than 10 years, we have making statements, making papers, making our position papers on the open access. So 11 years ago, the LERU published this roadmap towards open access that, well, it has 11 years, but some of the recommendations are still there, and some of the recommendations for the universities that are yet to start on doing that, just a few, that I think they are mainly valid. After a few years, there was this statement telling the mainly the publishers, that the Christmas was over. And this statement was a call for thinking about how the research funding should go to research and not to publishers. So stating the problems we have when especially things like the double dipping, how the money was really rising and going to the publishers, most of the budgets on research. Afterwards, our scope on open access was broader, and it was included in what we know now as the open science. So later in 2018, we published this roadmap for open science. And it was a roadmap with a very interesting title, because it's a roadmap for a cultural change, because we think that open science, and included in that it's open access, requires a cultural change in our institutions. And afterwards, we also released a document on implementing open science. And of course, one of the pillars of open science is open access. And in one of those pillars, we mentioned how we could go ahead with all this variety of this transformation of the scholarly communication. And finally, and Vincian already mentioned, I think that what we are really struggling nowadays is the research assessment. And at the beginning of this year, the LIRU published this document on towards the multidimensional academic careers. So thinking about the new ways of assessing not just researchers, but the academic in general. And I brought here all these documents because if you have the chance later on to review them and to look at what they're saying, you will find, I think, significant sentences, significant statements that I will like to share with you, because I think these are the cause of why we were writing all these documents. And I think it will be an understanding of why we will support this initiative of the Open Research Europe. So in one of the statements, we were calling to work with all the stakeholders and bodies involved in the publishing system to move forward open access. We were also asking for new publishing models, because they need to be identified to deliver the full affordable open access. So probably at that time, we didn't mention the diamond. That's a term that probably appeared later, but there has been many terms and many adjectives to the open access. Also, another interesting point is to see open science practices, such open access publishing and others, have the potential to bring about new and exciting pathways for supporting a culture of research integrity. Here, it is also included the open peer review. So it's important to remember this pillar of the open science, the research integrity, and how we need to strengthen the integrity among all the research ecosystem. And of course, in the last of our documents, we also identify these temptations that we have in many cases, that is very tempting to use traditional metrics for assessing research. And I will share with you some of the concerns about this last topic, especially coming from some of our institutions and especially from some of our research. So with this context, we can challenge Open Research Europe and see if Open Research Europe will help us on achieving our goals or our activities. And I also want to remember that 20 years ago, there was a call for an open access ecosystem. I mean, it's already 20 years ago. We've been discussing a lot. We've been discussing about different paths, different strategies. It seems that you have to be from one team or the other. But at the end, if we review that text, there is the final goal. The peer-reviewed journal literature should be open access. So probably with this goal in mind, we can think if Open Research Europe is the answer, or at least if it is an answer of this declaration from Budapest. And let's have a quick analysis. As Vincian did, I think I will repeat some of the issues here, but I think we all agreed on that. Of course, from our universities, we can support fully the initiative, because in our opinion, the platform provides a full open access solution with no direct cost for researchers or institutions. So it's one of these things that we said that it's affordable. We also think that it's a good initiative because it provides to the readers the full open access. So it facilitates reuse of all publications and, of course, all the related materials that are published together with the text. Especially the use of the license is important and is remarkable. It also all provides this transparent peer review process that I think it's really linked with the need of the research integrity. Also provides all this integration of permanent identifiers for publication, and also these permanent identifiers versioning control. So having DOIs with different numbers, but together linked when there are different versions of the text. And of course, they use other permanent identifiers as ORCID that will help to match and track the careers of the researchers, authors, but also the reviewers that we'll see if in the near future it will be somehow rewarded. And of course, another important thing, and I think we are all struggling in that direction, is that Open Research Europe allows this retention of rights. So it doesn't request any copyright transfer. So it's important that the original copyright holders of the materials remain as the copyright holders. They don't need to pass the copyright to anyone. So they have no restrictions for reusing by themselves. But of course, there are also some concerns that arise from discussions we have institutionally, but also with the researchers. Probably one of the main concerns, especially among researchers, is the open peer review process. We say that it's good, that it's transparent, but there is some reluctance. There is still some problems of acceptance. People saying, well, this peer review process will be of less quality because people don't want to be identified. It will be hard to get reviewers. There are some risks for young researchers telling that this is not a good article to senior researchers. There have been many discussions about that. And again, the choice of the reviewers, it's also some questions that are still raised. And a few days ago, a researcher came to me and saying that he didn't know exactly how these reviewers were chosen. I was mentioning that years ago when I was doing my research, when I was a researcher, in fact, I did the same. I was always proposing reviewers to the editor. So it's something that it seems that it's new, but it has been here for ages. Another concern is the concern that we always have with the research assessment, of course, that is how you're going to compare the publications in the platform with publications in journals in research assessment. And I think it's linked with all this process of changing the research assessment in general that we is going on at all the different levels from the Commission, but also locally and internally in our institutions. Of course, those disciplines that they still rely too much with the impact factor, don't understand how they can value these publications in Open Research Europe. And another question that probably it's a question that I could pose to Kelly or others is what happens with the publications that are not accepted, how they are identified, how they will remain there forever, or there is a way to have a collection or something like that. And another thing that I think already was somehow addressed by Kelly, but also which kind of publications are planned to be in the platform beyond articles. I think Kelly already gave us an overview of different kind of documents, articles mainly, but what about, I don't know, other kind of reports or other kind of chapters, something that goes beyond the typical journal articles. So these are some of the questions, some of the concerns that are still among our institutions, among our researchers, and that if we think of a broader uptake of the platform, we need to give some answers and to clarify. And of course, since we are in a library event, I think we also have to rely on the libraries and the librarians. And I think libraries, they will play a key role on the uptaking of the platform, because university libraries have been always a strong supporter of open access. They have been always the front runners of open access, always, I think, pushing the institution towards the open access. So I think the libraries are really well placed to provide information about the Open Research Europe. And they can, of course, answer any questions and address all these concerns that I mentioned, of course, with the help of the platform and the people behind the platform. I think another important thing is that we need to learn how to gather information about who is publishing there to get more data, as we do in other kind of publications. We gather information about where our researchers are publishing, where our institution is publishing. So I think it's important to get all this information and, of course, get feedback from our researchers and address it to the platform and the people behind. So that's all till now, and I hope we will have a live discussion later on if we have time. Thank you. I think, okay, Kelly.
Oh, sorry, yeah, thank you. I've lost my unmute button. You'd think I'd know where it is by now. Yeah, lots more questions, some of them which I can answer, I think, and some of them which can contribute to a lively discussion. I think Athena has been in touch with everyone, and the speakers can all stay on until about 2:15. So I'm hoping that some of the attendees can stay until then as well. So finally, we will hear from Susanna, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation and for the interesting talks I have had the pleasure to listen now before mine. And I will share my slides. Just a moment, please. Do you see them now?
I can see them, but I can also
Great.
see they're not like in, that's it, full screen. Perfect. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. So I work as a chief specialist at Tampere University Library in Finland. I am in charge of our open science strategic planning at the university level. And next year we are going to publish our new open science policy and action plan. And I'm also a publishing manager for our Tampere University Press, which is an open access publisher. And now I'm briefly going to tell you from my point of view on motivation to use ORE and on promoting ORE. And also I have some there are more like questions on further development. And we have already heard, it was great summary, Ignacy, that you had on the motivation and how universities see your analysis of it. And this is more like a very brief summary, I would say. So first there comes these practices. We have to trust on the quality, of course, of the ORE, and that there behind it, there are these responsible editorial and open science practices, not only open access, but more broadly open science, which includes also these metrics, as was pointed out already before. And it should also support long-term preservation and access. As we know, at the digital era, there are also scientific journals that just disappear from the internet. And then, of course, we have to consider the impact of research. So it goes hand in hand with all these other issues. But then from the university library perspective, of course, which was also mentioned before, that these prices and money issue. And it's very costly to our university to publish articles of open access. And here are just examples of our open ABCs from last year and from the year before. And they have been constantly on the rise. So we are truly paying awfully lot for publishing openly, and we should change the system, takes this whole open publishing ecosystem, and ORE is a very good example of one of the concrete ways how we can do it. So thank you already for that. And then on promoting, so they have to be at the core, there is this trust. And what's very good in ORE is that you are so transparent in your practices, and it is very core things. And also on how responsible you want to be with this editorial and open science practices. It's here also, it's not just providing open access to the actual articles. And from the library's perspective, we are not only talking and informing and teaching or training, not just this open access, but more and more this broader perspective of open science and as a part of good research practices. So it's very important, I think, from the library's perspective to take already in the beginning a much broader perspective. It's also good when we are motivating, or more fruitful when we are motivating our researchers to accept and learn and also develop further these open science practices. And there are several forms and ways in which we are already promoting ORE. So we mention it in our trainings, we take it up there, and I think our open science specialists think that these kickoff project meetings, they are very important ones. So we work together with our post and pre-awards teams, and then also these meetings with faculties and units, just the units weekly meetings where they may ask us to come and tell what's up in open science. So we can also there advertise and discuss these new platforms and ways of doing open science. And of course, all kind of happenings and also social media. Of course, we have this kind of traditional like guidance in literal format like LibGuides, but they are not that important if we think how to do it in an impactful way. So I think we truly have to pay attention more to those person-in-person informing ways and meetings, live meetings. But what next? So I think we should increase awareness of already excellent practices of ORE. There is truly many things that are in a very excellent way handled. And then one of the things is also this rapidness. We have already, or we are familiar with the signal of rapidness in the context of predatory journals, but there is also this good rapidness. And also among our researchers, they are more and more interested in open preprints and on the possibility to produce those. But together with that, we also have to add this awareness of versioning and citing, of course. And in ORE, there is a lot of information and very clear practices regarding this, I think. And as Ignacio already mentioned, this open peer review, it may be problematic also. And in Tampere University Press, we suggest open peer review to our reviewers and writers, and if they both agree, we can test. There are different models, but so far they have been more keen on revealing the identities, so not the actual review. But let's see how things happen. But this has also to do with small language area, I think. But then this responsible metrics, as mentioned, it's very important. So no impact factors, we take a look at article level metrics or also we should be aware how and in which context they are proper to use. And then you have clear research data policy and research data management practices behind your guidelines. And then I think we also should emphasize this economic sustainability. And when it comes to these different publishing types and formats, so I think these monographs is something we should also internationally develop further. I'm not so sure if it's well, so much of question of ORE, but when we think at the university libraries, more broadly this publishing ecosystem, so this is very challenging part, these monographs, although it's very traditional format. So in this open access era, open science era, it's still very challenging. And we are multidisciplinary university, and we have 7 faculties, and in each of them, they publish also monographs of, naturally, they are much more popular in social sciences and humanities. And then here also, this more like a question that is it something ORE should consider in further development in the future? So how to best serve also publishing other research outputs? You already provide these different article types, and there are, for instance, these software tools and mentioned and so, but in the context of research data, the variety is great. It's just awfully a lot, I would say. And in the LIBER conference, I am together with my colleague, we are going to discuss also this from the perspective of research libraries as service providers. But it has also to do with ORE, so I took it up here also. But then coming from us or representing very small language, I Finland, so naturally I pay also attention to this, these publishing languages, and at the libraries we naturally must consider and provide guidance and services also for the broader publishing needs. And if we think the impact of research in the society, so we should support also publishing in local languages. And perhaps in ORE, it would be good to take a look, for instance, at this Helsinki initiative for multilingualism in scholarly communication. And if I remember it right, in Europe, we have 24 official languages. But this is also like a question that more a question, and has to do with the broader publishing ecosystem and what's the role of ORE on that and its aims. So briefly, that was that, and I'm looking forward to further discussions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. I think there was a lot of information there and quite a few questions, I think, directed my way. So please feel free to bring them up again and I will do my best to answer them. I think from my perspective, it would be great to hear a little bit more about how ORE can get involved with these different institutions and what we can do from our side to help you in promoting the uptake of the platform, because it has been online for over a year now and we have seen a good steady stream of submissions coming in, but we would obviously like to see that grow and hopefully for it to become the venue of choice for Horizon funded beneficiaries in the future. And one of those key issues that gets highlighted to us is indexation, of course. Being such a young journal, we're not really indexed in as many places as some of our competitors, but also things like these national approved lists of journals or even institutional requirements and restrictions on where researchers should publish their work. So anything that we can do from our sides to make sure that we're included in these lists would be super beneficial to the researchers and to making it more making them feel a little bit safer to publish on the platform, I think. And a couple of you mentioned in your talks about the sort of reforms that are happening at the minute around research assessment. And I think this is going to be really important for Open Research Europe as well. It is a new model, it is different. And how can researchers feel assured that they're not going to be not quite penalized, but they're not going to see the same rewards as they might see if they were publishing in a journal with an impact factor of such and such. So yeah, I think Vinciane, you had some questions if we want to start off with you.
Yes, sure. Well, on the how to like EUA clearly could help in terms of promoting. I think that I will say something which is a very standard kind of response would be what we could do is together organize a webinar for our members. Mm-hmm. But of course, I was about to say, of course, we don't talk directly to leaders and directors of university libraries. We talk to the leadership of the university overall, but actually it is not a bad thing. So because what we often hear is that the awareness is there at the library level. It's not at the research department level or the vice rector for research, for instance. So we could help bridging that gap. So I'm just opening freewheeling here, but we could have something together with Liber so that you would have like together in the room, a virtual room, like the academic leaders as well as university librarians, libraries leaders. That could be an easy way. As I mentioned, also, we very much support the rights retention strategy as part of the different routes to open access. And it has been mentioned by all of us that this is a very, very valuable feature of ORE, because researchers do not have to ask for it. It is by default, it is ingrained in the system. So this is a major added value that we could help promoting. But I'll leave it here because I see that Ignacio wanted to say something.
Yes, well, I just wanted to add that I think also it's important to engage with these agencies of evaluation, national agencies that sometimes are reluctant to changes because they are, well, let's say in an easy life, with they just push a button and say, you publish there, you have 10 points, you publish there, you have 2 points. The problem nowadays is that if you publish in ORE, you have 0 points. And I think we need to change that, and we need to engage with those agencies and let them understand the value of this initiative and, well, all the details and the features that we highlight in this conversation today.
Yeah, I think when we speak to researchers, because we speak to a lot of researchers now, when we do, they're all very positive, they're very behind the model, but they're a little bit hesitant because they're not sure how it's going to reflect on them. And we completely understand that. And I think it was one of the reasons why I was super excited to work on this project, is I really felt like this change in research assessment and subsequently publishing activities really has to come from the funders, because people need to start feeling like they're not less likely to get their next grant if they publish in a specific way. So working with the European Commission on this and really pushing this agenda forward has been very exciting, and I hope to see ORE continue to push things in the right direction in this way.
But just for clarification, sometimes it's the funder, but sometimes in many countries like ours, we have another body that is the assessment agency. And the problem is that there is one funder, the Commission, and is fine with that. But what about the rest of the agencies or the rest of the bodies? I think these national bodies are also key into the discussion and the engagement and all that.
Yeah, this is where we're trying to reach out and get Open Research Europe included on all of those national lists of journals. And so at a national level, people can feel comfortable to publish here as well. And I think it is going to take a little bit of time for mindsets to change. Even though the Commission is behind it, it needs to get down to these national agencies, institutions, and subsequently researchers, which I think is going to take time. But yeah. Did you want to follow up there? You unmuted and then you muted again.
No, just I was thinking that we from the universities and also from the libraries, I think we can help also to make these discussions in our local places, because I think we can provide the connection and an easy approach to them. And also, if we are convinced as institutions, we have our voice in these places, and sometimes in these panels of evaluations, in fact, are researchers there, so we can also change their minds. And I think Vinciane has her raised hand. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I will put in the chat some pointers or some links to this reform of research assessment that is going on at the moment. So the good thing is that this is supported. So as ORE is supported and initiated by the Commission and as the funder behind it. The good thing is that the initiative towards a reform of research assessment initially came from the European Commission as well. They really listened to the needs from the community, because discussions on the reform of research assessment, on new assessment practices, this is not new. It has been going on for you mentioned, Ignacy, also like discussions that have been there for a long time. The DORA Declaration, the Leiden Manifesto, they are not new initiatives. Yet there was a feeling that there was a need of an extra push to get it to the next level in a way. And so this is just what the Commission did in terms of facilitating this getting together, basically, because they have the power to bring a vast majority, vast community together. So the good thing is that it is both initiatives are supported by the same policymaker / funder, because the Commission acts in those two capacities. So you have some sort of coherence and consistency in what they do. So this is very positive. Yet I want really to insist on the fact that even though it was initiated by them and it's still supported and facilitated, this is a community-driven bottom-up process. So it is really a community of stakeholders, research and innovation stakeholders, that are involved in a way or another in research assessment, that are part of the discussion, that are together building this new ways in the form of a coalition. So I will put in the chat a link to where you can find information on this, because it's very important. And going back to how we can bring this together, I think that in the near future, I would say before the end of the year, that I think I can say there will be a coalition made up of all those organizations that are willing to together change and move towards this change. And ORE could come to that coalition and discuss with that coalition, so that like all the angles are together in a way.
Yeah, I think ORE definitely has a role to play in that conversation, and hopefully we'll see that come to fruition over the course of the next year or so. Just to address a couple of the questions that were sort of raised during your presentations, I did share a link in the chat of a blog that we recently put out on our site about all the different article types that we offer and those that are available within the different subject areas. Open Research Europe as well really is very innovative, but ever changing as well. So we're really looking to hear feedback from the community as to what they like, what they don't like, what they want to see on the platform going forward, so that we can potentially implement those changes going forwards and really make sure that it's serving the community and meeting the needs of the community that it is trying to serve there. So yeah, do feel free to get in touch with me with any additional suggestions that you have. I think, as you all sort of highlighted, the major thing we need to do here is continue to raise awareness of the benefits of publishing in this way, and the benefits to you as an individual researcher as well. So happy to get organize any additional webinars with the people here, but also come and give some institutional based talks as well, if that would be useful, and send over some resources that you can share. But the best way to keep up to date with that is to sign up to our newsletter and our blog. We share a lot of resources on there that might be beneficial as well. And we'll also be present at the LIBA conference, so please drop by and have a chat with us if you're interested to set up more of a collaboration with ORE and to discuss how we might better work together on that. Did anyone have any final comments, or should we close it there? Because I'm aware that we're very over time already. No, I don't think there was anything in the chat either.
If I may, is just to say that the route, like the way is ahead of us. So there is a lot that has been done already, but there is a lot to be done still, and it's little by little that we will keep going. And this is a very good initiative. It is already taking up quite, like, because the numbers are already impressive in terms of like the submissions. So now we really have to get it to the next levels. And then, of course, there will be challenges. We all have mentioned a few. There are some discussions, some concerns, but we have to address them. And with this culture change that is happening at the moment, we will get there. Maybe not tomorrow, but the day after.
No, I agree. And I think I already mentioned in my talk that the EC is really committed to Open Research Europe for the foreseeable. So we will get there. It's just a matter of when. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. And apologies for overrunning so much, but that was a really useful discussion. And I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon in the future. And thank you all to our attendees for coming as well. And do feel free to reach out with any questions or suggestions that you might have. And just to say thank you very much to the speakers, very insightful. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.